So yeah, that's a problem, I realize. Okay. Um, Sometimes I really think that I should go to somebody else's classes. Um, okay, fine. Now, however, that we are in this class, what I want to do today is the following. I want to present to you better how to get information from servers. Okay, I reorganized that code. I actually posted it last Thursday or last Friday. I don't remember, one of the 2 days. But I uploaded an improved version of the code, and I just want to comment on it. And then I want to get into a new topic that is a little bit complex. I mean, it's not really very complex, but it's somewhat complex. That is how to work in the background, how to do background services that last a long time. I have the impression many of the projects need these. And so I want to go over it. I have a very simple background activity working, okay, and I want to show you. Actually, it's not working, but it compiles, you know. And if we wanted to do anything, we need to put in some behavior. But essentially, it will be good enough for me to explain you how it's built. So let me share the screen. No, this is chat. Let me share the screen and go. Go to here. So this is my service example, and instead I want to start from class chat. Actually, would you like to start from services? No, maybe we should conclude what we did last time, cleanly, before we go to it. So class chat works as an application that it's the kernel of an application that lets you do messaging from one person to another. And I posted on the class web page, updated server components and the client components. The client component is the Java part. So I will now comment on the Java part. So I don't know why there is an error. Actually, this used to work. Oh, but this is another thing. Yeah, it's always the problem of having too many things open, I guess. Okay, so what I did compared to last time is that I really wanted to give you a better class that you can use in your own code in order to contact a server and get the result. So what I did is this. I took out a class that is called server call. You know, I put it as a public class into its own file. And I don't want to spend too much time on it because this is basically the async task that you have seen already. Okay, you know, there is a public class, a server call extends async task. Okay, so there is nothing special to it. It's what we did before. Okay, it takes a server call specification and it returns a post-process pair, which now these are public classes as well because they occur in an argument of this public class. So unfortunately, there is a little bit of disinflation of source files, but it should not be very confusing. Okay, so there is a server call that will do the call asynchronously, right? You give it in server call spec the specification of what to do, and you get back in post-process pair the result. The class per se works very much in the way we already have seen, so I don't think there is very much to be said about it. Okay, it's simply the container for what we had before. The server call specification, I just cleaned it up a bit. So this is just a class that contains these 4 elements. It contains the URL, the context. It contains the URL encoded entity form, and use result. The use result is this function that specifies, you know, how you want to use this result. So you should subclass these, specifying for use result what you want. I also give it to you a method, the set params. I'm not sure that this is implemented in the best possible way, okay? But set params takes a hash map, and what it does is that it creates this form for you, okay? So this public URL encoded form entity form, maybe I should have done it a little bit better. If I were a Java purist, I should have declared it as private, okay? And the setter method for it would have been set params, and the getter method would have been get form that returns the value of form. Okay, I was sloppy, officially sloppy. Okay, but that's the idea. You don't want to fill in the form yourself, but you want to just use the set params to give the parameters to the form. Okay. Any questions so far? Is this clear? This is how you specify what you want the server to do. I mean, what you want to pass to the server and what you want to do on the results that come back by you know, overriding the implementation of use result that here doesn't do anything. Okay. Now there is a catch, and last time actually I didn't know the reply. I just knew that I had to do it. So you know, I was complaining, oh, it's a real bore. We have to pass around this context forever. You know, we cannot just say get application context. And you know, I never knew why. I just knew that otherwise the code doesn't work. And I looked into it a little bit, and now I know why. Essentially, the reason is as follows. Android is worried about the following scenario. You can build an application with a background running service, okay? And then you can say, get application context. And what you would like to get, and what Android wants to ensure that if you are, is that if you get a generic context that would still allow you to have access to the UI, this background running service, by getting his context, so let me do a picture perhaps here, okay? So here is what is shown on the phone, okay? So there is an application that is running and it has its own context, okay? Submerged underneath there is a service that is not visible. I mean, it's running in the background, okay? But this service was created by another application, okay? That is typical application 2, okay? But this also had a context, right? So if you call it get application context from here, you get that context. Now, suppose that when you are not running in the UI thread anymore, suppose that when you do get application context, you get a context. You always get a context. But suppose the context you get is good enough to enable you to modify the UI, which would be the case, you know, if in a post process, because the situation is analogous, right? The analogous situation is that you are in post process, and you ask for the context. So suppose you ask from the context from a place in which you are not in the UI thread, okay? If that context allowed you to modify the UI, you can have a background running service that can modify your UI of another app. Now, this can be a security problem. Not so much because you know, you can have a pop-up on top of your, I don't know, Facebook app or whatever it is that you're running now, okay? But once you get access to the UI, you can also say find view by ID and, you know, get edited text content. So, I mean, you can really get some strings out of the UI, right? And so that's what's not okay. So what happens is this, that when a context is created, it contains some random ID. It contains essentially a signature, okay? And you can get your own context. When you're in a service, you can get the context from the application to which you belong, etc., etc. But if you try to use that context to access the UI, you will fail because the signature you get will not be the signature of what is in the UI, okay? You need to be explicitly passed, for this post-processing to be able to modify the UI of this app, you need to pass the context here so that your call to the UI will contain a context that contains the right secret token. Essentially, that's the problem, okay? It's a problem of passing the right secret token. And so, since here we don't know what you want to do in the post-processing, but often you need to access the UI, I pass you the context, I have the context passed through all the way, okay? So fine, this is a server call specification. The post-process pair is just very simple. It contains the server call specification because, you know, why not? I might as well pass it to the post-processor in case anything of it is needed. I'm just trying to be general. And then I pass it also the result, okay, of the call, which is a string, okay? So these are the various elements. And these OK result is just my way of decoding the JSON that I get back. I see many of you are not using the JSON library. In my opinion, I repeat, it's the best one, but you do what you want, I guess. Okay. So in the main activity, so I have a settings activity, I have a main activity, and what I do is this then, if I go over the code. I initialize a random ID, okay, in the onCreate, in case you don't have it. In the onResume, I read the username. Okay, so actually the username has been read before, but I look at the username, and if it's equal to a no username, I do this set username. This set username piece of code does the following. It brings up a dialog that asks you to enter a username, and when you click the OK button, which is the set positive button, the positive button, okay, of the dialog, it does a server call in which I pass the username, the secret, and the user ID. Okay. The secret is to, so these things have the following purposes. The username is the username I've chosen. The secret is essentially a secret to prevent other people from using the same API. Okay. This is, by the way, done in a slightly sloppy way. A better way to do it would be the following. Okay. The secret is never sent across. I mean, okay, we are using HTTPS. But the problem is that if the secret is ever leaked, then it's lost forever, right? Because now we have it installed in many phones. So you should try to protect the secret a little bit better. In a somewhat better implementation, I would not be sending the secret at all, okay? I would be doing the following. I would be taking, sorry, I would do the following very common trick. I would send my my user ID, okay, which is my secret, my unique ID, right? The username. I would send a timestamp just to choose something that is never the same, okay? Then I would get these three, and using my secret, okay, using my secret, I would use a hash function to compute a hash of these of my secret together with these fields, okay? And I would send to the server also the hash result, okay, of hashing. On the server, what I can do is this: I can read this field, this field, this field. I have the same my secret, right? So I have the my secret. I compute the hash of these three, and I check that it's equal to the fourth field I got. That would be better, okay? I didn't do it out of laziness purely, but it's not a, not a good excuse. So I mean, for these task projects, I don't ask you to do things well necessarily to this level, but I just want to tell you how to do it. This is unfortunately only partly secure because somebody could actually disassemble your Java application and could try to get my secret from there, okay? So there are people that go to great lengths in obfuscation to avoid these. There are also other ways of doing these that are more complicated, and maybe in a later class, we can, or even today if you like, actually. When you like, we can talk more about methods of authenticating the phone to the cloud. In general, there are multiple of these methods, and unfortunately, none of them is incredible. Well, some of them are easier than others, but there is a variety, and there is there is a whole story, and it's a story I know only to some extent because some of these things take a lot of time, and I've never tried them myself. So I guess at some point, let me know if you want to talk about this user-to-cloud authentication, okay? But this is at least a somewhat reasonable scheme. So we are telling the cloud, okay, this is what we want to, to be called, okay? And in the specification, actually, my specification is a username set specification, okay? So this is a class that is defined below here that every time I need to make a server call, essentially I need to specify a class because I need to override this useResult method. That's the boring part, if you wish. So it's what in computer science is called coding by continuations. Okay, I call a function f and I pass to f what to do after f is finished. Okay, this is a style of coding that is called by continuations, but it's very common when you write JavaScript code. Okay, almost all code that is written for the web in JavaScript has this flavor. You write call the server, and then once you get the result s, call this function on the result. Okay. This style of coding by continuations has some advantages, okay, over normal coding. I don't know that I want to go here in a deep discussion, even though it would be worth it at some point. But essentially, the main advantage is this: that you are essentially in control of event handling yourself. Okay, you are saying what should happen when. I mean, in this example, it's not so evident, but consider two alternative ways of doing things. Okay, one is the classical way in which you say, read this file, and then you just continue the line after with what you want. Okay, that is the usual way of coding. The way by continuation is one in which you write, read this file, and after the file is read, execute f on the file content, and in the meantime you write other things. So what's the difference between these two ways, just as a matter of general culture? If you say read file in line, if you say essentially read f, where f is a file description, I don't know, s is equal to read f, and then you go on with your other statements. If you do this, what happens is that your execution goes to here and then blocks, while the hard drive is controller and everything is trying to provide you with the content of the file. Or maybe, there is actually a complicated operating system call that first tries to answer the content of the file from the in-memory cache of the file system, and if it fails, then it has to actually really do the read and yada yada. But what I mean here is that this is a context switch. Okay, it's a context switch in which all of a sudden your thread gets your running code gets put away from the CPU, and some other code gets into the CPU and gets running, and is handled beautifully by the operating system and not by you. Okay? If instead you use, I'll come to the question in a moment, the style of read f and then do g on the result. Okay? Where g is a function. Okay, so your code essentially stops here, and then g of s will define it, and it does what you want. Okay, so your code will look like many small snippets of execution, and essentially you will be never in a situation in which you're hanging anywhere in your code, right? You always run it to the end, and this has some advantages in the scheduling of your code. Scheduling it is much easier. It can happen inside your code instead of relying on an operating system scheduler. And so some of the advantages have to do with the way in which really caching works. Here you can avoid a lot of context switches, essentially, and so it can be more efficient. Yes.
So if you just ignore the operating system side.
Sorry?
Do you ignore the operating system side of things?
Sorry? Can you
ignore the operating system side of the side? Do you have to control the block?
No, I mean, in this case, I'm telling you this distinction between these coding styles for a matter of culture. In the case of Android, in this case, we don't have a choice, right? Because a sync task will have on post execution. I forgot the name of the thing, but essentially that is where control will happen after the thing is done. Okay, and so that we have no other choice but to package a function in an object and pass it to it. Okay, so it's not that we can. I mean, there is no good alternative here. Okay. Now, after I get the result, I have this dialog that I cause, and you can read it for yourself. But essentially, if I get a result, I store the username and I display it. Okay, and if I don't get a display result, I have dialog that says, I'm sorry, but you need to try again, and throws you back to the beginning. Okay? So it says the username is already taken, and it gives you an OK. And if you say OK, you will get prompted again for a username, basically. Okay? Because you see, if you say OK, I call again set username, that will try again to set a username for you. So that's essentially the flow that is going on here. Okay. So if we run these, we should be able to run it. Okay. Right. But this will try to contact the server. So actually, let me do it in a different way. So the people who are, the people who are watching the video, I guess they can try it for themselves, actually, since they have the code. But I think for us it's a little bit faster to just use it on my phone. No, actually, maybe it can really work if I launch an Android device. Let me try. It might be a little bit faster. Let me see. So there will be a moment in which it comes up. While it comes up, let me explain the next thing. The other thing that I did is an activity in which you can send a message for someone else. Just to give you a very simple example of how to do it. Okay. So how I would like this activity, this application to work if I were to complete it, it would be something like this. Okay. It would be my own messaging app, and it would have a main screen that says something like "Welcome, Luca." It would do a server call to get all the messages from my friends in alphabetical order. I mean, everybody who has sent me a message, right? So this would be a message, a message, a message, a message. Okay. And here I would have I mean, it's not a very sophisticated design, but here there would be a send button, or maybe on top actually would be a better place. I'm not quite sure. But here there would be a send button that when I press it, it gives me the opportunity of sending a new message to somebody else. And I would code the activity in such a way that if I click on this message, the message may not fit entirely here, but I would go to read it into another page. Okay, I would have a sort of a reply activity. So this would be a reply activity in which I can read the message, and I can type a reply, and I can write send. Okay. So these I haven't written it, okay, and the code that gets these I haven't written either. But if you click send instead, you can send a message to, you can enter your message and you can click send, I guess, okay, and so this goes on the server. This is very primordial. In fact, there are things missing, but this is basically what one could implement very quickly, okay? So you see, I've set up my username is Luke already. Now, if I click send, let me give you a demo of what I did. Okay, this George. Okay, and the message is I don't know. Let's go to the movies, whatever. I managed to make the keyboard work, by the way. If any of you is wondering about the emulator, there is a way to make it work. How do I get it out of the screen, however? No, it doesn't really work hitting back. Okay, and I can say send, and this will contact the server and send it. Okay, so I just want to go into a bit of the details of how I do it because it's useful. Here, of course, I simply have a button that says click send that launches the activity send. Okay. When you are in the send activity, what I do is this, okay? There is a non-create that doesn't do very much, okay? But it reads essentially my ID and my username out of the preferences, okay? Because I need to know who I am when I'm sending the message. It also does the following. So how did I get the progress bar going and then vanishing? Maybe you know already, but essentially every view in Android can have visibility set to 3 values. It can be visible, invisible, or gone. Okay, visible means what you expect is visible, and it's the default. Invisible means that it's still there, except you cannot see it and you cannot interact with it. Okay? Gone means that it's not even there in the tree of things that are displayed. So what's the difference between invisible and gone? One difference is this. Suppose my backpack here is a view, okay? And I say, I'm situated at 20 pixels left of the backpack for you, who are looking at me, okay? This is all good and well. If you turn the backpack invisible, I will still be here. If you turn the backpack gone, I may zoom, to wherever there is another, it's not well defined anymore where I am. So that's the basic difference. You don't occupy space anymore if you're gone. So this may change your view layout, okay? So, but this is an extremely useful thing. And one of the good design practices that I try to follow is the following, okay? I try to lay out a lot of the elements on the screen already. As I don't make things, I don't add or remove views dynamically ever if I can, because it just complicates my life quite a bit as a designer. I want to be able to drag and drop things in the right place, look at them, and be done with it. So what I did actually, if you look at my send activity, where is it? It must be here. Layout. Here. 1 second. So my send activity contains everything that it needs to contain from the beginning, okay, including this Twirly progress bar. And what I will be doing is controlling its visibility. And so what I do is the following. So first I call on create, and I say that the set visibility is gone. In this case, I trusted saying gone because I knew that nothing referred to it. So even if it disappears, this was fine with me. There is no good reason I could have chosen invisible, really. Okay? Then I say then I don't do very much, I just wait for you to fill in the message field and the destination field. When you click send, I do the following. Okay, fine. I grab the destination and I grab the message you want to send. No? Then I build a send specification. Remember, every time that we need to talk to the server, I need to build a class. So send spec is my class here. I build this class, and I set it the URL. Then I put into a hash map the destination, the message, the secret, the user ID, and the username. Why do I bother putting the user ID in it? Okay, because my username is Luca. If I just could send by username, then any one of you could spoof me. But none of you knows my user ID. So the server should verify that the user ID actually matches the username, okay, and should let you send only in that case, okay, to avoid spoofing. Okay, you set the parameters. Now you set the progress bar to be visible. Okay, I get the progress bar and I set it to visible, and I initiate the server call. Okay, the server call is actually very easy. The send spec class is quite easy. The only interesting that contains is use result, and use results works as follows. If I get something that is non-null, I decode it, and the success is equal to the result. If success, I finish. When you say finish in an activity, you finish the activity, and so you go back to whoever called you, in this case, the main activity. So perfect. Else, if the thing was not successful, I do something silly because I was in a hurry, right? But essentially, I eliminated the progress bar, and I make a toast that says network problem, the message has not been sent, and I leave you there, so that you can try to hit send again, because I have not erased the content of this. Okay, it's still there, so you can try again. Okay, so this is a primordial messaging app. To do it well, this is not quite enough, as you might realize, no? Because, for example, what if, it's pretty annoying. Now I wrote this message to George that might be quite elaborate, but now I need to message somebody else about getting together for a beer, right? And if I send another message, I lose the one for George. So I need to have a drafts folder somewhere. Okay, fine. And then I want to look at what I wrote to Helen yesterday. And so, where do my outgoing messages possibly go, right? I need to put them somewhere. Oh, great. So, this is my message view. Do I want to mix, for example, outgoing messages, maybe in a color, and incoming messages, maybe in another color, just in chronological order? That's a simple way of doing it. Or do I want to keep them separate, right? Also, there is another thing. If I'm going to have an outbox, this message is to George. Okay, and at some point, if I send it, it should appear here as sent to George, right? So, how do I populate this outgoing box? There are two ways of doing it, right? One way is that I only trust the server. So after I send a message to George and I get the OK, I just refresh my list of messages sent, and I trust the server to be still there, and so I get all these messages from the server. What if I lost the connection to the server? Should I be allowed to see my messages? I mean, should I keep a local copy, and should I sync my local copy of the messages with a remote copy? I mean, if I want to do a very nice app, I should, right? And so, and so there should be actually some more general API call that is called essentially synchronized messages, in which I would attach an ID to every message, and I would send up to the server the set of my IDs and message IDs and app that I have sent together with a timestamp, and get back from the server and reconcile the two lists. Okay, so this is an example in which, as for many things, doing the very simple step actually is not very hard. Okay, we have to do a few, and by the way, the server component for this is up and running, so this works if you are interested in looking at the code or by using it. So, but this is an example of how doing the very simple thing is simple if you do it just in the most straightforward, semi-shoelace way, done on a shoelace essentially, not really well implemented. Then, as you want to build really your next, how it is called? Sorry, everybody in Europe uses it instead to message. My mess. No, how it is called? Oh, come on, it's not Snapchat. My talk. No, come on, it was bought by millions by Facebook. WhatsApp. Yeah. If you want to build the next WhatsApp, I mean, it's actually not hard. But you need to do a lot of these details all right. Okay? I'm sort of coming to the conclusion myself that doing a lot of these apps that you see around is not so hard. I mean, at least it's not so hard. If you take this class and you're good in CS and you get together with other people who are good in CS, etc., you can build them. There is no problem with that. I think the real genius and the real difficult thing, at least for a person like me, is how to ensure that this app will really get used afterwards. I'm sure that there were a gazillion competitors of WhatsApp, and some of them died because they were just poorly written. But some of them simply didn't have the right genius in marketing. I think that's what makes a lot of the difference between success and also run. Anyway, so this is just a kernel of a messaging app. Any questions on this kernel and how it works? I mean, I personally think it's pretty cool how simple the code can be. It's not super simple, but it's pretty simple. Should I move to another topic entirely? I don't know. I mean, otherwise ask me questions. Otherwise, I don't know what to do, right? Any good question or? Okay. Well, is it clear? Okay. Okay. Fine. So let's move to another thing. So the other thing is services. And oops. Here. So this is the life cycle of a service. But before I comment on it, this is just I just took it from the developer guide. This page is actually done pretty well. So it's I learned from there, and it's quite well explained. But let me summarize for you how it works. So a service in an activity is running only as long as it commands the screen, right? once the user puts something else on top of the screen, all of the activities composing your app will have called their on resume and then on stop methods, and so none of your code will be running. Okay? So if you need your app not to start sleeping, okay, there is a simple trick that I forgot exactly. But essentially, in the onCreate method, you ask that a flag be added to the window, and the flag is a non-sleep flag. Okay, that's the recommended way. For example, if you want to do an application that gives you driving directions that should not go to sleep just because you're not touching the phone for 5 minutes, you can ask for that flag, and that will keep your activity up and running, right? And so that's a good solution. But it's not the solution to everything, right? In many cases, you want to do something related to your app to continue running in the background, okay? Because, for example, well, there are very many examples. Google Music plays in the background, right? You can do other stuff and it can keep playing. Then there are applications, I don't know, I use Glimpse. Glimpse lets me send my location to a specified email address or SMS, or phone number for a specified length of time. I find it immensely useful. I'm unrelated to them, I'm just a user. But I find it really useful. I'm going to a meeting or to visit someone, and maybe I'm late, etc. But I just give them a glimpse of where I am, and I don't need to call from my car telling them that I will be late or whatever. They know. Of course, we also use it for planning recipes when I go home, and and I want them to know. But it never works that way. But jokes aside, so the Glimpse needs to be able to run in the background, so that there is background activity, so that the background thread can continue to collect my location and send it every now and then. Okay. And some of you was talking to me about a location that lets you share your location with friends, an application that lets you share your location with friends, so that you would wake up every half hour and do something, okay? Like update your location. For many of these things, you need to have a component that runs in the background. A health app, that you carry around that tells you how much you work during the day, whatever, no? So how do you do it? You need to create a service. A service is somewhat similar to an activity, but it is detached from the UI, okay? So it's a long-running thing. And the trick is this. There are 2 different types of services, okay? And they're not very different, but it's different in the way they are created. And so here they're shown in parallel. You can essentially write, or actually you can write the same service, but you can start it in 2 different ways. In one way, you start it explicitly, okay? Let me do some diagram that sort of shows better how this works. In one way, you start it explicitly, okay? So you start it. The service, which I draw like this tick bar, starts running. Time goes down, okay? Now, you start it, and then, poof, the user may be doing something else, and your activity goes away. But the service continues running, okay? Now, later, maybe you restart your app. So let me say that this is your application, okay? So your app has been running in this interval of time, then you go on. Then, your app continues running, and now it wants to talk to the service. For example, this service is, let me use Google Music, because it's everybody knows about how to play music, or how a music player behaves, okay? So here, assume that you have started the music player, okay? Now you go doing your own business, you write emails to people, you use the phone for other things, and then you say, no, this song is really bad, I want to skip it. No? So you want to go open the application again, and you want to find again the service that is playing music to you, because I want to tell that service, please skip to the next. No? So when you start your application again, you need to be able to essentially bind to it. The problem is this, okay? This application created the service, but then it stopped. Now, the same application is starting again, but this does not contain a reference to that service, right? Because, I mean, this application did, because it created it, so it might have some kind of reference to it, like a variable that points to it or whatever. But certainly not this. this run, right? In this run, it just knows that the OS is running might be running a copy of the music service, but it does not know how. It's like as if you wake up on your laptop, you create a program and you want to say, is this other program running or not? That's essentially the problem. Okay, so you need to bind to it. When you bind to it, you essentially ask Android, hey, is there any music service up and running? If so, please give me a reference. So you get a reference to it, and then you say skip, and this will skip to the next, and then you may stop running, okay, because you're happy with the next song and you continue doing whatever you want. And then at some point, you bind it to it again, and now you tell it stop. Stop, and this will stop it, okay? Check. So essentially the idea is that a started service runs from when you start it to when you stop it. Actually, you cannot really stop it. It has to stop itself. Remember this, in Java, every thread, and the service is a thread, they have to commit harakiri. They have to self-suicide. I mean, they have to commit suicide. You cannot kill the thread. You just have to set a flag that tells the thread to please die. Okay? Because otherwise, if the thread doesn't decide to die willfully by terminating the execution, you will have essentially the garbage collector doesn't like it, and other things will go haywire in the Java memory model. Okay, so in Android you're supposed to let things die by themselves. Okay, so in practice every one of these services will have a boolean that says I'm running. No, I should be running, or whatever. I should be running, and this will turn it off, and then the service should check its state from time to time, and if I should be running becomes false, it should just terminate. Okay, so that's it. So this is one type of service. The other type of service works in this way. The app doesn't care whether the service is running, doesn't care about starting the service. You really don't care about the starting it or not. It's not really your business for the service. But sometimes you want to find it to use it. So you give it a bind directly. When you bind it to the service will talk to you for a while. Okay, so the service will talk to you. Okay, and maybe there is another app. Okay, and this app also after a while decides that it wants to talk, so it does a bind. Because this service may be something very useful. It might provide, I don't know, location information to everybody interested. It might be, the GPS service. It's not really yours. You don't care about starting it. You just say, hey, I want to bind it to the GPS so that you can start giving me the updates, okay? So at some point, this app may be done using the GPS and says unbind. But there is still another application bound, okay? Activity, actually, more than application, I guess. Well, it's an activity and in an application. Okay, fine. So in this case, if one binds, this doesn't stop yet, okay? Because there is still another one bound. But once this doesn't bind, then this is the service. So essentially, the service is kept alive only during the time in which there are activities bound to it. Okay. One annoying thing that is, I think a pity, is this: when you are inside of the service, there is no way for you to ask how many people are bound to you, how many activities are bound to you. You just know that there is some. You cannot ask how many.
So for the one, let's say a notification, other application, find and pause your music, save there.
So I don't know because I haven't looked at the music player, but so I can give you my best guess, okay? My best guess, actually, I don't know because, but there must be an Android service. I haven't looked into it, but there must be an Android service that is in charge of controlling the mix that goes to the audio out. Okay, so my guess is that that service is running, and you can bind it to it, and you can say now preempt what was running before and let me talk. Okay, and I guess that the audio out would give a notification to the music player that it has to pause rather than continue playing the song with nobody listening. Okay, I think it works in that way. But what I can tell you, however, is that even if you start your service from one app, another app can also bind to it. Okay, it's just a somewhat less common use case. If you started a service from your app, it's generally a service that is particular to your app, right? Because I mean, you get to name it unless you publicize it someplace and other developers decided to use it. So essentially, these are in my impression, these are mostly Android services that work in this way. Because you see, these are bound by apps that were written by other people. So of course, me and you can perfectly well agree that I write a service that you find useful and your app uses my service. This happens sometimes, okay? OpenCV or Open Computer Vision, this package for image processing is written in part in that way, okay? In which there is a separate service and then there is some code that you can include in your app to talk to that service. So that it comes as different pieces, essentially. Now, in fact, you install the OpenCV library and then you install your own code that uses it. But generally, at least in what I've seen, it's not very common that you write services for your own app that are also used by other apps by binding. I just haven't seen it so very often. Yes, there are ways, and I'm not sure I remember perfectly all of them, okay? But essentially, if you want other apps to know about your service, you need to declare it in some way in your manifest. And if you don't declare it in a special way in your manifest, then it's simply not visible to other apps. I forgot the detail because I have never wanted to make the opposite. The default case, if you follow it, will enable you to create your own service. To make it visible, you need to do something extra, which I forgot because I haven't done. But yes, very good question, yes. Okay. So this gives you these two models of connecting to a service, essentially. You call in one way, and we will be doing this way today, okay, because it's, I think, more common for your own apps. You started a service. The service, when it started, it gets a call to onCreate, and it gets a call to onStart command. It's I don't know why there are two calls. In practice, they always happen one after the other, okay? No, I think the difference is that you can see whether you have been created by a non-bind or a non-start command. I think that's the big difference. But often, but at any rate, you get first a non-create call and then a non-start command. They are the symmetric to the on-create and on-start of an activity. So you get these two calls. After these, the service is running, and actually, one of the catches that is not written here, but we do in our code is this: the service is running, but you need to create a thread in which it will be running. Okay, it's a minor annoyance. The service is running, and when somebody wants to stop it, this will generate a call to onDestroy. In onDestroy, you should finalize what you're doing, and your thread stops. Yes.
So if you file it,
Yes. When everybody unbinds, there will be a call to onDestroy. And so, in a way, you don't have a lot of time to live on. I mean, as soon as they unbind from you, boom, you're gone. You cannot continue a long-running task if there is no listener. Okay. So this scheme here is a little bit simplified because there are really three things going on. Okay, and so maybe I should make a sort of better drawing here on the board, but then we will see it in code a little bit better. So let me do a better drawing for a start service. Okay, just to give you the rough idea, and then we go into the code. But there is your application starts, okay, and then it will call. I tend to okay, now maybe it's simpler to go in the code. Well, I forgot. The truth is, what is the Okay, no, I now I remember. So this will say start of the service. Start of the service calling an intent. And the service, sorry, the service will get a call to on create. Why there is this lack of symmetry? It's the same as when I launch an application with an intent. You know, I create an intent to start an application, but the application, yes, the application has a way of receiving that intent, but it's activated by a call to on create, right? So and the same is for the service. It will get a call on create, and it will get a call to on start. When the call to on start happens, this has to create a thread in which the processing can actually happen. Okay, so this will create a thread. When this says stop service, okay, this will create on this will be received as a call to on destroy. Okay, and this call will set will do a call to I don't know die that will say something like should run is equal to false. Okay, and the method die will do something like this. Okay, and then this will observe the die and we come to an end. Okay, and so this is essentially roughly what happens. So there are, unfortunately for us, these three things that we have to keep in mind. There is the main thread, there is the service implementation, and then there is the service thread, which is the actual live code that will do the work. Okay, there are these three things. Okay. So if we now look into the code, let me not do any more the mistake. Now I learned that I should always close projects that I'm not working on, so that I have at most one project open at the same time. But if I look here, so this contains errors because it's actually I will tell you the errors are very minor, but there is a piece that I left unspecified, and we could specify when we like. Okay, so this is my activity. Okay, and let me start from the onCreate. Okay, so these are the flags that I was mentioning to you. This is it's not necessary to put these flags in there at all. So in fact, maybe I should delete them. But these are the flags that I told you that you can add to the window of the application to prevent the application from relinquishing the screen and locking, even if you don't touch it. Okay, so these are the flags that you can attach to it. Oh, sorry. My cursor was somewhere else. So I do the following. When I decided to start my service when the application does the on resume. Okay. Why did I want to do that? Why didn't I want to start the service even before? Oh, okay, fine. Whatever reason I had. I mean, I had a specific reason because I wanted the service to talk back to my UI. But so it was not useful unless I had a run on resume. But this shouldn't really concern you. You could do it on start and it would be fine. Okay. So what do I do is this. I produce an intent. Exactly as I would do for an activity, but this is an intent for a service. You see, the destination is my service.class. And instead of saying start activity intent, I say start service intent. So this is what creates a started service. And then I say bind my service. But this, we come to it in a moment to bind my service. Bind my service is this. I just tell you what it is, but then we will go to it later. Once you start a service, you are not given a pointer to the service. So you are again in this problem that you need to bind to it. So you first start, and then you try to get a reference to it through the operating system. Okay? Then let's go later to that, and let's see what happens when you start the service. So we are still here. So this is my service. Okay? It's a class which extends the service. let me replace this by a better tag. Okay. And what do we do? Let me go a moment to the onCreate method. Okay, so I want to get to the CPU wake lock. I'm not sure it's useful to you, but in this case, I wanted actually to prevent the CPU from going to sleep. This is probably a bad idea, by the way, you know. I needed it for the particular thing I was doing it, but I wouldn't advise you to use it blindly for anything you are doing, okay? Because you may want the CPU to sleep, otherwise you run down the battery, okay? Now, this is a complicated thing, but the idea is this. I mean, it's not complicated, but the idea is this. You never want to start a service and you know, let it go down in the dark abyss of Android without any way to fish it out anymore. Because remember that the service may be running even when the app is not running, obviously. That's the very idea, right? So the user then doesn't have a really good way of stopping it anymore, okay? So whenever you do, this is the problem is not there for bound services. For bound services, the service is only active when there is some app that is using it. So the concern is not there. But if you want to create a started service, you need to create a notification and bind it to the service. The notification is, you know, when you swipe down with your finger from the top of the Android screen, no, and you do this. I mean, my phone is locked, but this would appear. It would give you essentially a notification for your service, so that if the user touches it, that notification, you should code it to wake up your application that can control that service in the background. Okay, it's like when Google Music is playing, there is always a notification, so that if you swipe down and touch it, you can regain control of your music player. Okay, and because you need to give the user some way to stop your service at some point, right? Otherwise, you know, people will give you horrible reviews. So what's happening here is this: we are getting hold of the notification manager, okay, and and I'm calling show my notification. Show my notification is a method that I wrote below that does the following: it creates a notification with an icon that is just my launcher icon. Okay, I just use the icon of my application, I guess. Sorry, whoops. So, so the icon is just the icon of my application. Oh, come on. This blue color is really annoying. I give it a string, which is you know, like my silly music player started. Okay. You also need to say when. Okay, you need to give it a timestamp. You know, many of these notifications in later Androids have this timestamp attached to the notification. So I attach a timestamp. Okay, and then you need to say what happens when a person touches a notification. So by now you know that in Android, all this flow of control between apps and things is managed by intents. Okay, so I need to create an intent that will be fired when the user touches my notification. So I create an intent. It's a notification intent. Okay, that will bring me back to the main activity. You cannot bring someone back to a service. The service does not have any UI. You have to bring people back to the main activity, and from there, supposedly there should be some way to stop the service, right? So, so this intent goes to the main activity. I build a pending intent out of this notification intent, because an intent is like a live thing. You know, it wants to immediately do stuff. So you need to build a pending intent around this intent, so that its execution can be delayed. You know, you are wrapping the intent in a delayed intent. I don't know. You know, don't ask me why. They just did it this way. But then you essentially set some information about the notification to this event, to this pending event, and you start and you essentially start this notification. Okay. Notice how some of these things that I did according to the tutorial are already apparently deprecated. No, maybe that's not a deprecation. I think it is a deprecation. Yeah. You know, it's beautiful how they deprecated the things they recommend when you go. But this works, luckily. So I don't know what the new recommended way is. Maybe then when they will have new documentation, there is always an intersection of time in which the thing is both documented and not yet deprecated. Okay, fine. I make fun of my frustration sometimes. Okay, so fine. So this is this part on showing the notification that as I mentioned is important for letting the user stop it. Now, though, we need to start the thread, right? So I do the following. I create my task is equal to new my service task get application context. So my service task my service task is this class that will contain actually the runnable method, right? So this is where the code is. The code, I don't put the code in my service. The code that will run in the thread, I put it in a separate class that I call my service task. You know, we will go to it later, I guess. It's here, another file, no? So I create an instance of this, an object of this class, an instance of this class, whatever you want to call it, and I create a new thread, okay? But I don't run it yet. And so, why I don't run it yet? Well, my choice. I could also start running it immediately, I guess. I don't think that this is a very... let me give you... I think I essentially don't start it because I was being lazy. I say, well, if there is nobody binding to me, let me be a little bit lazy for just a little while. You know, why not? I mean, if you want to start it earlier, it really would have done no harm. So, so in fact, maybe it would be clearer if I just get rid of these and I put this here. I think for you it would be better. There is no need for this complicated code. Okay, so this is a simpler solution. Now, what is this onBind? Okay, because once you create, what I omitted from here is that you still need to have a reference of it. So let me tell you a bit how this binder thing works. Okay, when I wanted to bind to a service, the simple way that I think every one of us is hoping for when you read the document before you read the documentation is this. Oh, I bind it to the service and I get back some kind of object that just contains all the public methods of my service class. That would be an obvious thing, right? But it's not necessarily what happens. So essentially, when you call bind, this service has to reply to you with a binder interface. Okay, it has to give you a binder object. Why this? Because of generality, they think, you know, oh, maybe my super complicated and nifty, I don't know, GPS service does this incredible amount of stuff. And internally, for some reasons, I want to have all these public methods that I don't know about. But if you just bind to me, you're not allowed to see all that. Okay, I give you this interface, which is completely separate from my own implementation. And these are the only methods that you should please call. Okay, that's it. So normally this binder contains a translation between the calls that you might receive from the application to actually how the service inside works. I always found that this level of double complication unnecessary for my purposes. Okay, so I do this incredibly simple code. This is how you reply to a non-bind request. Okay, so you need to return an object that is of type iBinder. I don't know why I intent binder. I don't think it's related to Apple. Okay, eh? Ah, right. Great. Thank you. So I return that is my binder. This is my binder. What is this my binder? I forgot. What is my binder? I define it somewhere. Here. My binder is a new my binder, of course. And my binder extends binder because you always need to extend something. And it does my service gets service and return my service this. So let me tell you what this thing does a moment, okay? I return you an iBinder. When you call the get service on this iBinder, you will get me, the service, okay? And you will be able to call any public method of the service. So this is a way to short-circuit the complexity of having to define a separate interface. You can do it if you want, but I don't know. It's not really necessary if you're in control of both sides of the code. Okay? If you do it in this way, you gain a little bit of flexibility because whenever you add a public method to your service, you can just call it from your activity without needing to declare it also in an interface with its translation. So it's just a little bit easier to manage your code, I find, unless you need the complexity. Okay? But so this mysterious code says that my binder is an extension of binder and has a method called getService. When somebody calls getService, you return yourself. You return the service. My service this, myself. Why do I write my service this? Because I'm in the class my binder. If I return this, I would return my binder. If somebody says getService, I want to get this of the enclosing object service object, right? So my service this. Okay, sorry for this gobbledygook. How is this used in practice from the main activity? In the main activity, it's used in this way. I call bind my service. And what this does is this. I get an intent to my service class because, I have to essentially tell Android, hey, please go look for that service and give to me a binder to it, okay? So I form this intent, okay? And I call bind service of this intent with service connection. Service connection, oh God, goodness, where did I put it? Oh, I must have written it somewhere. It's here. The service connection says okay, I override, because this is again one of these things in which you call the bind, you have to give this service connection object that will get a callback once the operating system is done finding what you're looking for. I'm sorry, it's really so controversial. I mean, that's why I give you the example, I guess. I don't know. I wish it was simpler, I guess. But then you do the following, okay? Out of this iBinder that is passed back to you, service is a horrible name, and maybe I should rename it to service binder. Okay, but so you transform it into a binder. You get the service doing binder get service. I set a flag service bound is equal to true because I want to remember it, and that's it. Okay, at this point, finally, after all this back and forth, I have a reference to my service inside the app that just created. At that point, I'm done. Okay, so let me summarize it to you. In fact, let me maybe remove it from here and put it just below where it's called. Maybe it would be easier if this was here, right? Would be more logically placed. So together, this is how to bind. You bind to your service. Okay, you create an intent, and you call bind service of this intent, giving it a callback. Sorry, giving it a callback called the service connection. The callback has to implement a method on service connected that is passed to the binder. Once you're given the service binder, you can call methods of the binder. Because I was lazy, the only method of the binder I defined is getService, by which you can get a reference to your service. You could define more complicated methods of the binder. You can define whatever you want in the binder. The binder is this interface object. So if you call a method in the binder can implement your call in terms of a method of your service. So I think that these designers, for generality, wanted me to work in the following way. They wanted me to get the binder and say binder.foo, and then the binder says foo. They call foo on me, so foo on me. So I get the service and they call foo on the service. Okay. But then every time you modify or say the argument list of your service public methods, you will need to modify the binder as well, right? And I find it is slowing down things. So instead, I short-circuit it with this probably semi-horrible thing in which the binder has a method called getService that just returns to the service, so you can do whatever you want directly. Okay. So we have done how to switch it on. Not only how to switch it on, but now we have a reference to the service. Now we can go to how to switch it off. So when you want to stop it, so what do you write in your on pause method? First, you unbind the service. Okay, this you should remember doing it. I don't remember if you forget about to unbind the service. I don't remember if you get a crash or what, but in any case, you get something that shouldn't happen. Okay, so fine. When you in your on pause method, you should unbind from the service. You can unbind before if you wish, by the way. Okay. Oops, sorry. This problem with the mouse that is in another place. I mean, if I touch the cursor, here I was. Okay. Now, then, and I wrote it in this way, which is an error because service not needed is a boolean that is not defined. Okay, but essentially, what I wanted to say is this: if you think you won't need the service running anymore after you quit, then I create an intent that will stop the service. Okay. This intent will call stop the service that will call on destroy in the service. When the service gets a call to on destroy, what it does is this. It calls myTask.stop processing. Okay. What does myTask.stop processing do? Well, let's look at what my service task does. Okay, it's quite short. So this implements runnable because this is what runs in the thread. So this has a method run. And when you run, you do something, and I should have added, checking that, no, it's silly me. That was already okay. Do something. So I do something while running is true. Running is a boolean. Is this thing that I should have called, that I could have called, should I be alive, essentially. While I should be alive, I do stuff. Okay. Now, let's not pay attention to add results callback and remove results callback. These I may need to do them next time because they're another sort of complication, and I want to tell you what they are about. Okay, so those I will go over later. But essentially, when you call stop processing, I remind you from on destroy here, I call stop processing on my task. In my task, when you call on stop processing, I just say running is equal to false. And this will cause my thread to finish, right? Because of that while statement. So that's how you stop the service. Okay? And maybe for the moment we don't go into any of the other part. I can tell you what the other part is about, essentially. But so what I told you so far enables you to create a service, get it to run. You can bind to it, and you can call methods of it. Okay. So if it's your activity that initiates the communication, this basically solves a lot of your problems. Okay. Because I can create the service may be doing really interesting stuff, And then, where I can bind it to my service, and I can call methods like, give me a cake, give me an interesting piece of news, give me whatever you want, and they get it, and that's very good and fine. The thing that is slightly harder to do, and that I think we will be doing next time because we have already done too much probably. But the thing that is a little bit more difficult to do is this, and it's a problem that in fact it deserves its own lecture probably. You are now in this thread, okay? Suppose you generate a lot of interesting stuff. For example, I don't know, you are generating music, images, updates, etc., and you want to push them to this. Okay, so it's not that this wants to make a method call to that. That we have taken care of. It's more that this wants to produce results that it needs to pipe back to the listener. Okay, how do you do that? And this essentially is not specific to services. It's a generic problem. If you have a background thread, how do you pass a stream of information from a background thread to the foreground thread? Okay. So one way is the foreground thread always calls and says, gives me only one more, fine. But if you want to do the call in the other direction, how to do it? Okay? And I want to do it, this I want to do later. Because the way to do it is to implement inter-process communication, get one of these asynchronous Java data structures, implement something like a buffer of elements that, one of these essentially queues in which you can put elements in one end, from one end and pull things out from the other end. A producer-consumer connection. That's what you need to do. Okay? And so I want to show you how to build it, but it will be for another time entirely because it's another kind of worms essentially. I mean, it's not that complicated in the end, but I just don't want to do it now. Okay? So now the part that we have done is this. We can start at the service, we can bind to it, get the binder. The binder has a method called getService that gives us back the reference to the service. At this point, we can talk to the service by calling methods of the service. Okay? And when we want to stop it, we call these I forgot what it's called, service. Yeah, how it is called? Service stop service, I think. I forgot. But when you want to stop it, I think it's here. Yeah, you call the stop service of an intent that causes beyond destroy here that should set to the bit in the thread that tells the thread to please stop. So that's the flow. Okay. Now, if you like, we can try to actually get it to run. Okay. We probably cannot get it to do anything very complicated, but we could, for instance, have it log the various events. Okay. So let me try to do it in this way. I want to make a copy of this application. Okay, I call it simple because it won't contain. Close the other project so that I avoided this gaffe of editing the wrong files. Okay, now let's try to get this to actually compile. So what do we want to do? Do we want to stop the service? Here I think so, right? True. These overrides here, these are exactly the things that I want to talk next time. So I just need to kill them so that I give you a very minimal example. Sorry, here, this is not needed anymore. And what is this error? Yeah, and this is also not needed anymore because we don't have any result to call back. The type main activity is already defined. Right. Let me delete this other file that was there just by mistake. Okay. So what do we want to do with our service? Give me the name of a method that we call, like um, pass like give biscuit of 6. Okay, so um, we give it a biscuit essentially. Okay, fine. So this is an error, but it doesn't matter. It's only because we don't have a biscuit method. This we don't need anymore. Okay, so we need a give biscuit method. Let's remember that. Okay, so in main activities ready, my service is service is being created. This we should see it, and then it has some errors here due to the notifications. New notification. Instead of these, I will simply give it a string. So get string. It will be but get string. Well, fine. I'll just give it a string that says uh, my my special service. Okay. And these get text here. Um, um, this is my notification, my special service, and here I can give it something like is running. Okay, fine. I mean, I just had to fix these strings, and I did the sort of bad way. Now, in my service task, again, there is this thing on these concurrent queues and service callbacks that are not needed. Okay, add result callback. I want to get into this later. This essentially is what is used to implement this publisher subscribe thing. Okay, but otherwise is really very simple. This is all that's needed. Okay, sorry, this also goes away. So essentially, it becomes very simple. But we need to add our method public void. Okay, how was it? Give biscuit int biscuit. Okay, and we can do a log I of tag. I think tag. I got the biscuit. Okay, plus biscuit. Okay, so at this point, magically, all the errors should be gone, but they're not. Okay, let me see a moment if I can find it. Okay, yeah, I have to remove these methods as well. I mean, basically, I'm doing a big work of chopping stuff out. So now there is only an error in main activity here. Why doesn't it like that I give a biscuit of 6? Sorry? Oh, right. Right. Right, absolutely. So how do I do it? I need to do it in this way. Public void give biscuit int b. Okay. So this is in the service, in my service. Okay. And the problem is that I now needed to pass the biscuit to the running thread. Okay. So here I need to say my task give biscuit of biscuit. of B, I guess is called my biscuit here. Okay, so I need essentially from here to call to the service, but the service is really, the service created the thread to do the long running computation, and so now I need to pass the biscuit to my thread. Okay, so I give the biscuit to my thread, and this is, and then int. Let's call it B here, like before. Int biscuit is equal to B. Okay, so and the thread will have a local variable called biscuit. Okay, private int biscuit. Okay, and here, if I want to do something a little bit more interesting, is the following. Okay, so we're in the background, and I think we should log what the biscuit is every now and then. I don't know, just to show that it's running. So there is a way to sleep in the background. I have it in this app actually. Do in the background sleep. I think it's one of the examples you have as well. I never remember how to sleep. Jokes, not alive. Yeah. Well, fine. Okay, this. So I need these lines of code here. Okay. While running, I try to sleep for a little while. Let me sleep just a tiny bit longer. And then I sort of say log die tag my biscuit is plus biscuit. I don't know. And of course, if I do it this way, things will crash, okay? Because biscuit, well, they may not crash. But let me do it a little bit cleaner, okay? So initializing the biscuit to 0. Okay? Fine. So this might even work. I'll try it. My bet is that, of course, things never work on the first try, but, why don't we try? So run it as an Android application, okay. I don't know whether it knows that it has to run on this emulator or not. I guess we will see. Okay, so what's happening? I see a complaint. Starting the service, trying to bind, and it's unable to start the service because, sorry, this is, because I have essentially a bad reference to my service. Com example, service example. When I produce the intent, I probably updated the code in the wrong way. Okay, so let me try to fix it. If I cannot fix it quickly, I will postpone it because these things are always, it's just some boring debugging on. Where is it that I created the intent? Okay, so these things are not needed, by the way. Just to eliminate a bit of clutter. So it's apparently these. I'm checking the package names that they match, and they seem to match. Boo. No, I think I have some idea, you know. I think my idea is that my Android manifest is out of shape. Because, you know, before I came to class, I sort of updated these, and so it must be here. You see, the problem is that this declares the activity, and it declares it fine, but it does not declare the service. And so if you do not declare the service in the manifest, it cannot possibly work. Okay? So I need to go to some place where I can look at how my service is declared. I think here I still have an editor in a window where I can go to Android manifest, and there must be some service. Let me just copy this and adapt it. And if this fix doesn't work, okay, we will forget about it. But essentially, here I need to be able to declare this service, and I need to change a bit of names. So this was called com example dot what was the package? Service example. Service, okay? Oh, this is Android exported false. That answers the question, right, of how to avoid that the service is accessible by others, okay? It's done there, okay? And so this is the icon. So let me try to run it again. As I say, you know, I give it this one more attempt, but if there is any other error, I give up, because there can be just many. I mean, this code is, of course, you know, you need to check it out of the details. But let's see whether it runs. Of course, even if it runs, it doesn't particularly do anything on the screen, but we should just see that the log contains something interesting. So the log is this Android upside down. Is it? Should it be already running or not? Sorry, I lost this. Sorry.
One example in the manifest for the service example involved both things.
Oh, it could be, yes, of course. Where? Here, com example service example service. No, it's my service. That's it. Thank you. Yeah. Oh. Okay, so now at least it crashes, but it's good, right? Because it means it's running. You know, there is an Android runtime unable to create a service, because of these stupid wake lock permissions. So I should just remove those. But you know, I don't know how long will it be before I remove all these things that are not needed. So where are the wake locks? Here there are some. But I don't think that these are the flags that are causing the problem. I think that the things that are causing the problem are these. Gets the CPU wake lock, and I did not have a permission for that, okay? So I should do these. Now, yeah, it's one of these issues, you know, always one more try. Oops. Come on. Oh, do something reasonable. Ah. Yeah, anyway. Yeah? So the CPU wake lock, the CPU wake lock is used, beautiful, eh? So you can you can be at least certain that I also have problems with Eclipse. I think it's actually running. It's just buggy, right? Everything is running. The CPU wake lock is used. Okay, fine. You know, I'll post it up. The CPU wake lock essentially tries to prevent the CPU from going to sleep. Okay, So once upon a time, in the old Android models, or in the old Android specification, you were supposed to get the CPU wake lock and other wake locks in order for your application to be up in the foreground and always running. Okay? Now this has been deprecated. If your application has the control of the screen, you're supposed to be getting the flags that I was showing to you in the main activity in order to prevent it from sleeping. Getting the CPU wake lock is an incredibly heavy-handed way to say, my service is so important that please don't even dream about putting it to sleep every now and then. You know, even if I drain down the battery to the latest ounce, I should be always running with the CPU. It's like, you know, telling Android not to shut me off. I was doing it in this app because this app was mainly the app from which I grabbed the code was an app that you run when your phone is plugged in. It's not a meaningful app to run when the phone is not plugged in. Okay. I can also tell you that what I was trying to do there works only in part. So what I was trying to do in that app is to grab the CPU dock in order to keep the CPU alive, but also I wanted to have the camera alive. I wanted to be able to essentially do some movies in the background, okay? In such a way that, that you know, this camera could record events that happen in a space in the background. The problem is that, unfortunately, there are many Android manufacturers for the hardware portion, right? And so not all the Androids responded to these locks in the same way. There are some Androids in which if you get the CPU wake lock, they really let you have the CPU awake. There are some other Androids in which they give you the CPU, but they let the camera go to sleep, which in my case was just not very useful, you know. And there are others in which they don't even let you have the CPU for very long at all because of, you know, how the manufacturer tweaked the Android OS. So I have found that in practice it seems fairly dishomogeneous in actual devices how they abide your wake locks. So the flag that you wanted the screen to stay up, that I found works quite well across the various platforms. Okay. But the CPU wake locks, I had much less luck, you know, trying to enforce my services from actually really running. On pure Android phones, it works. But on you know, on various phones that are not, you know, pure Android, I mean the Nexus various that you find advertised on Google Play, I guess. No, those are the pure Google phones. But on the other phones, I had much less luck. You know, it's really variable. So if you develop for real, you know, you may want to sort of grab all the used phones you can from your friends to test it on those phones because you have a lot of surprises, I guess. Okay, so yeah, the lecture is over, but next time I prepare questions on services for next time, okay, and we go from there.
Professor, you said to come talk to you if we were interested. You said you had some like potential internship opportunities for the summer.
Yes, yes. Hold on just a moment that I want to switch off the transmission.